Hey everyone, we're back with another episode here with the Flag Lab. I'm your host, Coach Lambo, and this week we're going to talk about an install schedule. So we've covered a lot of topics from how to develop your formations, how to develop motions, how to incorporate those two things together, how to name terminology, how to attack one high and two high defenses, how to attack one-person rushers, two-person rushers, and how to manipulate defenses in order to get players the ball in space. But now what I want to talk about is how do we go about installing all of the concepts that we would like to deploy for our upcoming season to make sure that our offense is clicking when it needs to be at its best. Remember, if you always want more content, hit that subscribe button down below so you're alerted when the next videos drop. Now let's dive in. Right. Upon completion of a season, what I do prior to developing my install schedule is I need to divide our off season into different parts. Because from there, I'm going to reverse engineer and see what things I need to have installed at certain times to ensure that our girls are developing and growing our playbook as our season progresses so that we are where we need to be offensively by the time games become very important when it comes to that league and playoff time. So here I have written up our off-season schedule. So in the spring, this is just going to be your postseason. So when the season's over, you're going to have to decide what things are you going to be teaching at this time of the year. For me, I went from having 47 girls in our program to 12 girls in our program because they were leaving to go play their other sports. We are a fall sport here in California. So our winter season and our spring season, we lose girls to those winter and spring sports, which is a great thing. And I encourage our girls and I push them into competing in other sports to make new friends, to work on different skills, and to just go on and live life and help our programs out on our campus the best way as you can outside of our flag football. So when I have these 12 girls, what are the main things that I can teach these 12 girls during the spring? So by the end of the spring and girls start to trickle back in as their other sports seasons start to end, how can I get them to teach them certain things that they were missing while they were in their other sports? So the spring, I decide what are we going to be teaching them that's going to be pertinent for our development and growth in the playbook. The other part is end of summer. So by the end of the summer, I have to have a list of plays and formations and motions and concepts that we need to have installed by the end of the summer to make sure that we are on pace to becoming the offense that we need to be competitive once we get to that first game. Which brings us to our next schedule. What do we need to have installed by game one? So by game one, what types of formations, motions, plays, concepts we need to have installed, practiced, and nearly perfected by the time game one comes along to make sure that we're competitive right out of the gate in that game one, and then build from game one on to the next. The next part of the install schedule is going to be, where do I want our team to be when league play comes? So in California, how you finish in league is going to determine if you make the playoffs or not, and where your seating in the playoffs are going to be. So we need to make sure by the time we get to league that most of our playbook is installed. Because if we're missing plays that can help us be effective and finish as a top 3 finisher in league, then we're going to probably miss out on a playoff berth. So we want to have our entire playbook installed, and that's on me of what plays are going to put our offense in best situations in any scenario to ensure that we can be a top 3 finisher and extend our season into the playoffs. And the last lead is going to be playoffs. What concepts do we need to have installed during the playoffs to ensure that we are ready to make a championship run from game one to the finals? So in all these parts of the season, what you're going to have to decide is, what do I need to have installed by then to ensure we can get as close as we can to this championship game? What terminology, what plays, what tactics, what skills, what personnel groupings are you going to need to have installed at different parts so your playbook can evolve, develop, grow, so you see your offense improving from the spring all the way to that last game of your season? Let's take a look at the first part of our off season as we enter it and what I like to install and make sure we have installed by the time spring comes to an end. So the first thing I want to install is alignment and formations. I usually want to go over this again because we have a lot of ninth graders that are just finishing up their first year of flag football, and I want to make sure that they understand what all of our alignments are and what formations that they need to know at that time. Most of it's going to be alignments, like how far away from the sideline do I need to line up in our doubles formation? How far is it from our condensed formations? How far do I need to be from my number 2 receiver when we line up in a bunch set? So we're going to go over those in the off season in the springtime. So when we get to summer, we only have to teach a few individuals that, but then we'll have the help from these girls who are still around with teaching them those alignments as well. The next thing is going to be, most of these have to do with terminology, but we're using a lot of our terminology and implementing it at this time of the year because I need our girls to be able to identify 2 droppers, number 2 receivers, number 3 receivers, trip sets, bunch sets, tight sets, stack sets. Those types of terms need to be discussed early on so that we know that we're on the same page once we get to the summer and definitely into our fall in season. The last thing I want to do is have a defensive back go out there or a wide receiver go out there or a quarterback step out there, and I'm going to ask them, well, what did you see the number 2 defender do? Or what did the number 2 receiver do? And they're going to be like, who is that? We don't want that. We want to be able to communicate effectively, efficiently, concisely, and quickly on the sidelines during the season. And that starts with our spring terminology install. The next we want to go over are signals. We want to start putting in our hand signals right away for our offense to make sure that we know that every signal means a formation equals an alignment. So I have to know how to read that signal, how to translate that into the terminology that we have, and then translate that into the alignment I need to line up in. And so we have to start really early with our signals and our terminology so we can constantly speak our sign language with each other early and often, so we don't have confusion once we get into our season. The next is routes, just a lot of route recognition. If we have any new routes we want to install, if there's confusion on names of certain routes, we name every single route. We don't go off of the wristband, because I want to be able to call any play in the world that we've ever run or put our player in any position that we need to be successful. So we name every single route, and we want to make sure that we clear that up in the spring so we understand what a slant is, what a deep out versus a short out is for our players, so we can communicate effectively again throughout each game. Next thing we want to go over formation shifts. Since we're talking about formations and alignments, what's our terminology when we're going to do a formation shift? We don't shift every play. So how do we identify when we are going to do a formation shift? So this is a great time for us to start talking about that during the spring, because we're going to have to rehearse this over and over and over again, because you all know that if you shift illegally, that's a 5-yard penalty. So we want to make sure we shift effectively and we evade any penalties on offense. And the last thing we want to talk about is some motions. Do we want to put in a new motion? Do we want to get rid of a motion? Do we want to rename a motion? We'll talk about those things during the spring too. So by the end of the spring, I'll have a list of things that I need done here, and it's usually involving this. I'll usually have a number of things that I want too. So I won't have all of our motions installed at this time. I'll just have maybe 2 to 3 that we really want to work on. And if it's a new motion, then we're going to work on those the most. If it's a new formation and formation shift, then we're going to work on those the most as well. And then while we're reviewing the ones that they learned from previous seasons. So that's our spring, and that's what I want us to learn while we're in our spring session. The next part of my install schedule is going to be the bulk of our install schedule. So this is the time where I get all of our new incoming freshmen have done tryouts. All of our girls from other spring sports have joined back into flag football, and any other newcomers that have joined our program now are with us. So we have everybody throughout the entire summer to do our biggest install. The good thing is during the springtime, I have girls who can teach a lot of these things that we've already talked about during the spring. So it's not just me and our coaching staff having to coach up all the terminology. We have other girls who can assist in this. I also utilize a Google Classroom that has cheat sheets of our terminology that our girls can access at any time. They take screenshots, save it in their phone, and they can study those on their own. When I do my install schedule, I usually start like this during the summer. I'll have the formations. Let's look at those first. So the formations, we have 2x2, 3x1, empty, and 2-back formations. 2x2 and 3x1 is going to be the bulk of our formation sets. So by the time the end of the summer comes, I want to have 4 to 5 different 2x2 sets and 3 to 4 different 3x1 sets. As I develop my practice plans throughout the summer, maybe one week I'll only do 2x2 formations, and it'll be 2. So we'll run as many plays as we can out of the 2x2 formations that we learned for that week. So if I'm going doubles and then I'm going to go double stack, maybe all week, all the run plays and all the pass plays are going to be run out of doubles and double stack. This way we can review it often and progress our playbook quickly without them having to be bombarded with terminology, alignment, and assignments each practice they attend. The next is be 3x1 formations. Maybe the first week I do only 2 2x2 formations. The second week I do 2 3x1 formations. Now I have 4 formations installed in the first 2 weeks, and maybe a couple of concepts from run and pass into our playbook. So by week 2, I can potentially have somewhere around 12 to 18 different looks out of our concepts that we can run against a defense, and we're only 2 weeks into the summer. We get about 8 weeks into the summer to practice, so we're on track for a good schedule. And then any empty and 2-back formations, sometimes I wait till the end of the summer to put those in, because I really want the base of our offenses to be ran out of 2x2 and 3x1 formations. So we'll practice the base of our concepts out of those formations. Don't get caught up in wanting to have 9 different formations installed on the first day. I really like to only install 2 formations of practice if I can, sometimes 3 if it's only a minor change within that formation and it's easy for them to pick up. By the end of the summer, I want to have 5 to 6 motions in. Usually, again, I'm only going to install 1 motion a week. If I have 8 weeks, I can install 1 motion in a week, and I can just add those to these other motions and concepts that I had, so the play looks like I ran 2 different plays. Let's say I run doubles with a slant out combination. Okay, that's one way to run it. But I have double stack slant out combination. That's 2 ways to run it. Let's say I have trips, and then I motion, use one of my motions, to a double stack running slant out combinations. That's 3 different ways I could run a slant out combination and attack a defense for game 1 already. And you can install that in the first week. So here you just want to make sure you have a nice little progression for your team so they're not getting overwhelmed with what you're installing. Again, stick to 1 to 2 concepts per week and then add on a little bit of formations and motions through each practice that you progress through, so your girls are getting the repetition of the same play over and over again, just with a different formation or motion. The next thing we want to talk about, we want to have about 8 to 10 formation shifts by the end of the summer. And this is simply easy to do as long as you're teaching these formations. So as long as you're teaching these formations, you're teaching them how to shift to them as well. You're just going to have to let them know when you're shifting, how you're going to shift, what's the alert to shift, how quickly do you do it, how slowly do you do it. That's what you're just going to have to determine on your own when you're installing this. Okay, now we're getting to our plays. So when we're installing our formations, you want to install your base plays out of that. What are the base run plays you really want to be able to execute out of your 2x2 formations, out of your 3x1 formations, with a motion, without a motion? And you're going to want to install those one at a time. I only want to install about 2 to 3 run concepts by the end of the summer. I don't need to have 6 different run concepts if I'm running out of these different motions and trying to keep defenses off balance. I want our girls to be able to run very few plays and let me dictate how we're going to create the space or create the advantage against the defense. I want to make it as easy as possible on them, so I will bear that burden of being knowledgeable and tactful enough when I attack a defense to make sure that they're successful just doing the responsibilities that they're used to doing over and over during our practices. So by the time we get to the end of the summer, I want to have 2 to 3 run concepts and 3 to 4 pass concepts. Again, when I talk pass concepts, I don't mean route combos. Pass concepts could be quick game, rollout game, 5-step drop, 7-step drop, whatever your concepts are, that's how many you're going to have. I want to have 3 to 4 by the end of the summer installed. So this is our end of the summer. And if you multiply a lot of these numbers, we'll show you between these 2 to 3 and 3 to 4, let's say we have on the top end 7 concepts that we like to run, but we run it out of 14 different formations with 3 different motions. It's going to look like we have like a 55 play playbook by the end of the summer. After the end of our summer, we have our dead period. We have 2 weeks we take off. Now we're gearing up towards game 1, whoever that game 1 opponent is. When that game 1 opponent is, I need to make sure that 80% of my playbook is installed. So I usually have about 2 weeks, it's more than 10 practices, to get ready to make sure we have 80% installed. So the summer, I need to have somewhere around 65 to 70% of my playbook installed. So those last 2 weeks, I can install that 80%. That's going to make sure that we are super competitive and on track to be where we need to be successful by the time game 1 hits. So I encourage you to have most of your plays installed by game 1. If you don't, you're going to find yourself teaching, reteaching, and playing very, very slow if 80% of it is not installed by game 1. If you go into game 1 with 80% of your playbook installed, you're going to be feeling good about yourself. Don't go into game 1 as a must-win game. Go in there as a must-have 80% installed and clicking on all cylinders with what we have installed so we can iron out mistakes as we go from game 1 to game 2 prior to reaching our league or conference games. All right, we're almost through our full install, and I really, really recommend you having your entire playbook installed by the time you get to your league or your conference play. You don't want to leave anything off to the side that could have helped you win a league game that would have been pivotal for you to reaching the playoffs. So by the time you get to league, you want to have all your formations installed, all your play concepts definitely need to be installed, so you're not putting your quarterback or your other players in situations where they're having to learn new concepts out there and perform them at a high level with high stress now, knowing how important these league and conference games can be. So make sure you have close to 100%, if not 100% of your playbook installed. If anything, those plays that aren't installed yet need to be tweaks. That's something we'll talk about when we get to the playoffs, but most of your plays need to be in by this time. So when you start your schedule install, what plays are you going to need to have in? What formations, shifts, motions, personnels are you going to need to have installed by this point? And reverse engineer that, take it all the way back to spring and see what steps you need to take in order to get here by this time. This is very important. If you want to do your seniors a favor and extend their season by at least one more game and reach that playoffs, make sure your playbook is installed by the time you start that league or conference play. All right, we're at the final part of our install, and I know I had said have 100% of your playbook installed by the time you get to conference in order to get to that league play, but there are going to be instances when you get to the playoffs and you see a minor tweak that you can make to a concept, a formation, or a motion that you could really take advantage of defense, and you want to make sure that that plays in. That's when I recommend it, during the playoffs. By the time you get to the playoffs, you should be able to do what you wanted to do and do it well and do it fast and execute it effectively and efficiently like a well-oiled machine. So when you get to the playoffs, you just got to keep continuing doing what you're doing. Players are going to have a little bit of added stress. They may be a little bit tense if it's their first time going to the playoffs. So you need to make sure that you're not putting the added burden on them of having to learn more stuff. If anything, it just needs to be minor tweaks. Like let's say you have your dubs formation and you find out that the other defense moves their outside or number 2 defender like 3 yards inside your number 2 receiver. So she can't get a screen on there, or she's going to run into her in certain plays. Maybe you say, hey, this week, every time we call doubles, our number 2 receivers, you're going to line up 3 yards inside the hash. That's a minor tweak. That's something they know. And they may forget it the first few times they do it within the game, but if you practice it enough and it's within the basic scope of your offense that they've been doing since the springtime, then this is going to be an easy tweak for them. Maybe you want their speed outs now, instead of being 1 yard, you want to push it up to 3 yards because they're playing from depth and you want to maximize the depth you're catching the ball at. Those are the minor tweaks that you can feel free to make. Now, I'm not going to say you should never, ever, ever install a play at this time, because I've done it a few times myself in the playoffs. We found something we could really exploit in one round, but it actually stayed within our playbook for a few rounds after that, all the way to the championship game. So I'm not saying you can't do it. I would say just don't get in the habit of having a bunch of new plays trying to outdo what other defenses are doing. And if you've watched episode 1, I've showed you some keys that you can use. So instead of being a reactor to what defense is doing, you dictate what the defenses do by your offense and how you set that up. That's how you're going to win games, and that's the edge that you can create while allowing your players to do the same plays, responsibilities that they've been doing all year long to get to that point. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of the Flag Lab, where we talked about how to create your install schedule so you can scaffold one thing to the next and progress your playbook from the off season all the way through next season's playoffs. If you like this video and you can take 1 or 2 things away, please hit that like button down at the bottom and be sure that you're subscribed to this channel to be notified as soon as the next video drops. Remember, if you have any questions, feel free. My email is in the description below to email me any questions. I have a lot of great questions coming out that's inspiring new episodes, and I'm happy to help you coaches out with whatever you need. Thanks again for tuning in, and remember, see the defense, solve the problem.